I'm surprised that such a fuss has blown up about this. I mean, the world is facing war, famine, hunger, all kinds of huge issues, and we are what? Hyperventilating about Karwa Chauth? I am surprised myself about young modern women, educated women, wanting to adopt the hijab. I was imagining that my life now as an actor is going to just be more and more and more boring. I've just come back from a film in which I was riding a motorcycle. So boring is definitely not it.
Ratna, you are one of our most acclaimed, one of our most brilliant actors. And as you complete more than 4 decades in this industry as an actor, you are in the headlines more for what the polemics, the political positions that you take these days. So let me start by asking you about a comment that you made to Pinkvilla that immediately grabbed national headlines. You said, we are getting more conservative. There is a danger that we could end up like Saudi Arabia. अब मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूंगी, what is the commonality? If you look at Saudi Arabia is a country where women have just about got the right to drive, just about got the right to go out on their own. Those are the kind of battles that women have to fight. Here, we've just elected our first Adivasi woman as a president. We've had a woman leading this country in different political roles for decades. Even the Americans don't yet have a female president. तो ये आपने जो सऊदी अरेबिया के साथ analogy draw की, do you regret that? Do you stand by it? Do you want to explain it?
Yes, I'd like to explain it. I never imagined that there is a parallel between India and Saudi Arabia. There's no question of that. We are a very different civilizational attitude. As a country, as a civilization, as a society, we have always celebrated, venerated female power. Shakti is an idea that all of us have grown up with and have imbibed deeply. So we are certainly nowhere near Saudi Arabia. But as a conservative society, I just use Saudi Arabia as a sort of an extreme, elite conservative society. So I was trying to make the point that we definitely don't want to go in that direction, do we? I mean, we have forged over the last 100 years a huge space for women in our society. Whether it was Jyotiba Phule and his work and many others like him, whether it was women who have been fighting for rights all these years, my mother and her generation, we stand on their shoulders. We are nowhere near being a conservative society as yet. On the contrary, I thought we were moving towards being a progressive, forward-thinking society. I'm just surprised by this sudden turn towards a more conservative attitude and a way of looking at society that I'm seeing around me. The rise of ritualism and superstition all around. I'm scared of that.
So do I take it that you took an extreme example like Saudi Arabia to make a point that we should not become like this? A lot of people felt that it was a distorted analogy. It was an inaccurate analogy. The very likening was misplaced. On reflection, do you feel that, or do you stand by what you were trying to say?
I stand by what I was trying to say. And frankly, I'm surprised that such a fuss has blown up about this. I mean, the world is facing war, famine, hunger, all kinds of huge issues. And we are what? Hyperventilating about Karwa Chauth? Really?
I'll come to your comments on Karwa Chauth in just a moment. I guess that I would personally disagree with that analogy for the reasons I listed in my question, that structurally, Saudi Arabia is a theocracy. Structurally, Saudi Arabia is run by a kingdom. Structurally, women have never enjoyed the kind of rights that we have in India. And therefore, I wonder why Saudi Arabia struck you as an example.
Because it was extreme. I was just trying to draw a sharp division between two ways of looking at the world. That's all I was trying to do.
You say, why and how does the world have time to hyperventilate about Karwa Chauth? And I was quite intrigued by your comments on Karwa Chauth because, one, cinema. Cinema is a space like no other that has romanticized this particular tradition, songs around it, not eating till you sight the moon, Madhuri Dixit and Hum Aapke Hain Kaun comes to mind immediately for women of my vintage. So in a way, you occupy a space which has, before I come to the politics of Karwa Chauth as you see them, the industry that you represent has created an entire subculture around Karwa Chauth, has it not?
That's right. That's right. And it has led to the important sudden revival of this ritual in the public mind. I think many people who didn't do Karwa Chauth earlier have suddenly been seduced into doing it. I have no problem about somebody doing Vata Savitri or Karwa Chauth or whatever it is that gives them comfort. But don't you think it kind of demeans myself in my own eyes, a woman in her own eyes? I feel that. Somehow it makes me feel like a dependent. I don't like that feeling. And that's what I'm objecting against. And as for my industry plugs every idea that works at the box office. I don't think they are known for taking a stand about social issues. But there have been an equal number of films which have talked about the situation that women face in our country in a much more realistic manner. So both streams exist in the film industry, and that's how it should be, I feel. I like the diversity of opinion always.
Yeah, so let's explore this idea a little more. I think as we've grown older, we have understood that actually we are all, to varying degrees, a product of patriarchy. And many traditions, if you examine them theoretically, from a kanyadan in a marriage ceremony to a way of dressing, to anything. I mean, what is meant to even be benevolent, if you look at it a certain way, can be looked at as sexist. So when you made these comments on Karwa Chauth, I hope you were trending on Twitter for 2 days straight, and a lot of people were offended. They saw your comments as two things: one, anti-Hindu, and two, they said you ignored choice. Now, I want you to speak a little bit about this idea of choice in women. When women say, we choose to do this, we choose to do this, we choose to keep a fast for our husband. And today, many husbands also fast with us. And, it's just a little bit of fun. It's a little bit of joy in our marriage. And it's a moment in our marriage. You would say what?
Sure. I say that makes a great deal of sense. And as I said earlier, there should be a variety of opinions. I don't like the idea of one opinion taking over in a society in any case. So yes, there should be choice. I mean, I have done several little rituals when I was a kid, which later when I look back on them and I wonder, really? I mean, what was that saying to me?
Like which ritual?
Among the Gujaratis, my mother was a Gujarati, so that's the sort of family that I grew up in. Among the Gujaratis, there's something called Morakat, which you do for 5 years before you attain puberty so that you get a good husband. I did it and I got a good husband. So it sort of works. I don't know. But I wouldn't ask my daughter to do it. I don't know. I just feel that over many centuries, we have been kind of idealized into accepting our oppression. Women themselves just don't see that they are that these kind of rituals are a sign of oppression. My own mother didn't see that in some ways. And it was a surprise because I thought of her as a very educated and a very iconoclastic kind of person. But there you go. So there is this kind of choice. But eventually, if you are a thinking individual, you must think for yourself and ask, is this choice the kind of choice that makes me feel good about myself? Does it give me the confidence to face this world? Does it give me a sense of self-validation and my place in the world? And then if you want to make that choice, of course. And yes, men do join their wives. Don't forget, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. The hero fasted along with the girl, of course, surreptitiously. Nobody else knew. The men didn't know for sure. But I see why not. If it's a common celebration where a husband and wife together want to celebrate their link and their prayers for a long life together, why not? That's a fantastic idea. Same as having a wedding anniversary party, isn't it?
So Ratna, I think that's the point, that people can readapt or reimagine old customs to a more contemporary value. But my question to you was going to be, I was intrigued to hear about this, evidently sexist ritual that you went through as a child for a good husband, and you said you got a good husband. Among the comments, and I think that's very sexist to link a woman's views to her partner, but among the comments made about your views on Karwa Chauth was, why did Ratna Pathak Shah not comment on, let's say, the hijab? And I actually ask you about the hijab not because you're married to a Muslim, which is what a number of the trolls said. I ask you because it's an area where, again, the issue of choice gets very complicated. We have seen women in Iran, Afghanistan, presently fighting the law for the right to not wear the hijab. And in Karnataka, we've had this whole furor over young women saying, we want to wear the hijab, even at the cost of not going to school or college. Now, if you say that we have all been socialized and, we don't even realize when we're being socialized, does that not extend to the hijab?
Yes, I do agree that it does extend to the hijab. I am surprised myself about young modern women, educated women, wanting to adopt the hijab. As you said, it is a very complex issue. And frankly, I don't know enough about the reasons why girls make these choices. I'm just very depressed that even in the 21st century, we tend to look at the woman essentially as a sexual object. I think we should have dumped this attitude. The need to cover up a woman, whether it is through certain kind of clothing, whether it is the ghungat or a dupatta, which we all accept very easily, the hijab, which bothers a lot of people nowadays, but it's in the same vein, isn't it? It's again a way of showing a woman that her position is a secondary position. I'm very surprised that young modern women don't see that link. And I wish they would. And I mean, when you see young girls on the streets, going to school, going to college, walking with confidence, that gives me a sense of hope. And I'm so surprised that this issue has been blown up so much, and it has been deliberately blown up, isn't it? The hijab issue in Karnataka in particular. It was just, I'm surprised by that whole situation, I have to agree.
But, when you made those comments on Karwa Chauth, one of the comments made was that Ratna focused on one faith and not on another faith. And, and you are saying the hijab represents very complicated politics to you. You are saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does, because it is an identity marker which seems to be important. I don't know, is Karwa Chauth similarly an identity marker? I didn't think so. There are many Hindu women who don't do Karwa Chauth. And it doesn't make them any less Hindu. So I really can't understand this fuss at all.
Well, I always argue that both the sort of hypersexualization of women and the need to drape them in hijab they're two flip sides of the same coin. They're both different versions of the male gaze, quite honestly. Let's get to your own. There were some very fascinating sort of allusions in that conversation you had with Pinkvilla. So full credit to them for drawing you out. And I want to pick up some of them. The thought of your life in the 70s, scriptwriters walking into your home, making offers to your partner, Mr. Shah, Naseeruddin Shah, invisibilizing you, your feeling that there was no space for a woman like you, your sense of the caricatured roles that were offered to other actors. You named Shabana Azmi and Smita Patil. Look back at that time. How did you feel crouched in a corner of your own living room, not being noticed?
As an actor, extremely disappointed, because I was looking for work. I wanted to work in movies as much as I did in the theatre. Movies were a way of making a living. At that time, television was certainly not as important as it became a little later. But when I came out of drama school and came into the work world, I really was hoping to get work. I didn't realize many things. One, that you had to actively go out and seek work. I thought they know me. They've seen my work. They come and see my plays. Many directors, many scriptwriters have seen my work. If they think I'm suitable, they will get in touch with me. That's not always true. Obviously, I should have been more proactive. Also, I have to admit that I wasn't a very polished actor at that time. I really did not know my job as well as I should have. I was in the process of learning. And I'm glad, in a way, that I didn't get too much work because that would have shown me up. I'm glad I got the chance to study the business of acting a little more. And I'm glad I got a chance to do a lot of theatre in the meanwhile. And then, of course, television came my way with comedy. And as I've said many times, saved me.
You spoke of Shabana and Smita always crying. What did you mean by that?
In the kind of commercial films they did, they often ended up either singing or crying. In the more serious films, the so-called art films and all that, I still feel that the roles written for women were not nuanced, except for a few. They were strong positions that were being taken. There was, the scripts were talking about women's liberation, but from a male point of view, largely. And yeah, go on.
Yeah, you called the stars of the time obnoxious. You spoke about the industry environment being toxic. Toxic is a word I hear millennials use quite often, or the Gen Z current generation. What did you find the most toxic and obnoxious about those years?
Well, the kind of work I did, I was lucky that I was not in those kind of environments. But I often went on sets with my mother, for example, or my husband, and I saw the kind of atmosphere there. The great chasm between the way the stars were treated and the way everyone else was treated. The huge difference between the respect that actors got on set, the kind of banal sexism thrown around all the time, the kind of jokes. I really found that very, very difficult to take. And it surprised me, but not really, because I've been seeing it since I was a child. Remember, my mother was an actor, and my father also was connected with films in a sort of a roundabout way. So I was often on sets, and I've been seeing it. And what was worse for me was the lack of focus and concentration on the work that we were doing. Film shootings were often like a party. Everyone sat around and chatted while the technicians did all the work. And then you'd arrive and sort of throw your weight around. And this was not what I imagined a work environment to be like at all. So all that was what I
what was the most sexist thing that somebody said to you, or the most sexist experience of your time in the industry?
Actually, I'm sorry, I'd have to be reporting what other people said. I wasn't really part of the industry. You've got to understand that. I was just floating around on the side. So nobody took me seriously or importantly. I wasn't important enough to even be commented about. I was just somebody hanging around on a set. So I was invisible, as you said. When I started working myself, and it was in television, it was a much more democratic medium. And that's what really attracted me to it. And that's where I felt that I had found my place.
Yeah, one of the more caustic comments, though, you made was not just in the context of Shabana and Smita, but you said this in another interview. I think I read it in the Indian Express. You spoke about your mother, Ratna Pathak, and you said she was forever frozen in a white sari and expression number 65, effectively saying that nobody actually got to see her talent, and that's what happened to women in the industry for years. So, speak a little bit about your mom.
Yes. My mother was a really extraordinary actor on stage. People who have seen her, I haven't seen some of her best work, I was too young, but people who have seen her productions in Ahmedabad or her later productions in Bombay, she really was a live force on stage. And nothing in the movies captured that spirit of her. But interestingly, all her white saris and all her weeping and crying that she did in films forever. Today, when people talk about her, they talk about her in Golmaal, the one role where she was able to show another side of her. and able to let loose the really lovely, funky, crazy actor she was. And,
Yeah.
that's what people remember. So finally, history tends to equalize many things.
I mean, I loved Golmaal. It was absolutely one of my favorite films. But, then let's talk about the battles since you found your groove in television. There's so many different battles, right? For women, ageism, casual sexism, even the color of your skin can be used against you. And then, of course, there's a prototype of what a heroine should look like, what older women, should be cast as. How much has changed and how much has not changed?
As far as the older women are concerned, suddenly we are having our moment in the sun. Look at the number of roles being written for women my age. And that's a huge, huge difference. I was imagining that my life now as an actor is going to just be more and more and more boring. I've just come back from a film in which I was riding a motorcycle. So boring is definitely not it. And I hear that when I talk to Supriya, I hear that when I talk to Nina. All of us are suddenly getting work of the sort we never expected, quite honestly. So that is a huge, huge change, a difference. And suddenly, women of different types are being seen in the entertainment world. I can't say films have adapted to this change half as well as the OTT world seems to have. But yes, women are being looked at just as people, not as appendages to some other important character, but just for themselves and getting the chance to do stuff that younger actors didn't when they were, about 30, 40 years ago when I was starting out. These kind of roles were just not possible, not even on television very soon. I mean, even on television, suddenly it went from these interesting women like Shanti or the Kavita Chaudhary character in Udan or Tara or Idhar Udhar, Supriya and I as two young women just living alone with a man in a flat with no sexual or emotional connections of any kind, really. I mean, these were new modern ideas. And then came the whole Saas Bahu world. Overnight, television changed and we slid right back. So the OTT world at the moment is again showing great possibilities and great ideas. New ideas are being thrown up. Let us not do again what we did to television. Let us not do it to OTT. But I'm not very hopeful. I'm afraid
Why?
we just might
Why?
end up there.
Why?
Because of the dependence on Bollywood. Most of our entertainment, Hindi language entertainment, I don't know enough about the other languages, so I won't speak. Hindi language entertainment, most of it is focused around Bollywood. And that behemoth just rolls over everything and sort of smoothens out all the interesting ripples and changes that are occurring. So I am a little worried about that. But this is a new world. We've never been here before. So I'm not completely not hopeful. I'm still hopeful.
Well, let's keep that hope alive because there's some very interesting work happening as well. Let me ask you this. We've spoken so much about finding an equal space in the creative world. What about the Me Too movement? There was a phase when suddenly the industry was talking a lot about sexual harassment and affiliated issues, and we were thinking we would have a kind of Harvey Weinstein moment here in India. It didn't quite happen. I mean, there was a burst of few accounts, and then that was it. How did you see that whole debate?
It was very, very disturbing and depressing for me. I really thought that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. And of course, it was addressed in this very sensational kind of way, which have led to all the various problems that women who have stood up for these issues have faced. Within the industry, of course, we like to paper over everything. So we managed to paper over this little blip. It was unfortunately just a blip in terms of, pinning responsibility, accepting a mistake. All that just never happened. Justice has not been served. But what it has done is that it has made this a part of the conversation in the film world, on a set. It isn't half as unpleasant as it used to be earlier. Of course, I'm the wrong person to talk to. I'm not at an age when men are going to hit on me. But even among the young girls.
But would it happen earlier? We've all gone through some experience.
Some amount of it, and nothing worth talking about. So let's not go there.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the young girls are facing today, but I have talked to some of them, and things are changing. There is an acceptance, at least, that this is not supposed to be just casually dealt with. Behavior between the sexes on a set, within the work environment, has to be looked at with some seriousness. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, to make it part of the conversation at least, and to make people a little more careful about how they behave is some achievement. Let me end by asking you about whether we can actually have professional equality without personal equality. And that needs including men in the larger feminist conversation.
Right.
When we speak of sort of feminism, we forget that men are as culturally wired as women. When we speak of patriarchy, we forget that there's an onus on men, for example, to be the better earning person, to be the provider, to be more successful, heck, even be taller. Have men got left behind in this conversation?
I think so. And that's one of the major problems we are going to face. We are talking about women finding their voice and making their way in the world and standing shoulder to shoulder with the men. And women are accepting that as an idea in their heads. When I was growing up, just the idea of me being equal to men, it took me, even with my kind of family upbringing, where I wasn't ever put down because I happened to be a girl. Even I had swallowed it through the socialization and everything that I'm seeing around me. It took me a long time to get past that. And if I'm the kind of woman that I hope to see more of, but what about the men that are going to live with me? I was lucky. I was surrounded by men that were able to accept me for what I was. My father was not, didn't stop me in any way. My husband has been highly supportive. My sons, I'm surrounded by men who have given me wings. But that's not true for everyone. And that's certainly not true for a lot of men, because now they are also unable to figure out how to address the situation, what is expected of them. And how do you change something that's been told to you from the time you were a child? I think mothers are terribly responsible for the way in which men have been socialized in our country. And this is something that we are going to have to talk about. We've got to talk to the men, because patriarchy affects them even worse. This hyper-masculinity that we see around us, are average men able to sustain that? The kind of masculinity, hyper-masculinity, this violent atmosphere, the macho man that we see in our movies, are regular Indian men capable of being that? How do they?
And the flip side is true. And the flip side is also true, that a soft man is not considered attractive sometimes, because even women are socialized to find a certain kind of guy attractive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So unless we learn to think, both of us, men as well as women, unless we learn to think together and look at us as equals and not simply as sexual beings, that's the important thing. That's my problem with the ghungat or the hijab. It just makes that one part of me the most important part of me. And I think that needs to change in women's minds as well as in men's minds.
I was reminded suddenly of Rajkumar Rao when he got married, the actor. He took the sindoor and he put it in his partner Patralekha's sort of mug. And in that instant, I think it was one way of making something that was highly traditional, a moment of equality. At least, he made the attempt. So there are men who are trying to make that attempt. I have to ask you about your marriage. You said my husband, my boys, my father, everyone gave me wings. marriage, you've spoken about so many institutions. Let's talk about marriage. I mean, marriage is considered by some to be, in its origins, highly patriarchal. It is tough to make it a completely equal music, so to speak. How has that journey been for you? Have you evolved as an equalist, even in your personal space?
Oh yes, and both of us have. We didn't start out like this. As a young person, you have all kinds of ideas in your head, and some of it is very messy. And you take your time. You have to journey before you find where you are eventually at. And both of us have taken that time. It hasn't been easy. And in a profession which is so competitive and so visible, and both of us as actors, they were, it was a minefield in many ways. But we have navigated it. And we have navigated it because we were willing to work at it. And both of us genuinely respected the other. I think that was something that saved us from going into an area which would have been unpleasant. And I think that is what we have been able to impart to our children, Hiba, Imad, and Vivan, all three of them. All three of them, I think, are thinking individuals. They are not buying into any kind of story that's been given to them by society or by their friends or whatever it is. They want to think. They want to make up their own mind. They are struggling. The process is hard for them as well. But that's how change occurs. Change does not occur easily. It doesn't occur with simply a line of legislation, does it?
No.
Something that's existed for 3,000 years is not going to change so far quickly, no? We all have to work at it. And we all have to work at it with intelligence. I think that is the message I'd like to give out.
Before we let you go, what is the one thing that Ratna Pathak Shah would tell her 18-year-old self? What's the one thing you know today that you struggled with, labored with at 18?
That I have value. But first, I must discover my own value in my own eyes. I took a damn long time to do that. As an actress in particular. And of course, as a human being. But as an actress, I just took too long to discover what I was capable of as an actress. Because largely I was thinking of acting as a profession that did not require the kind of commitment that I discovered it does require. My attitude towards acting was rather superficial, I'm afraid, when I started out. And at 18, I wish somebody had told me, look, if you want to act for the rest of your life, you've got to think in a very different way. You've got to train, and you've got to train ceaselessly all through your life. But that's given me so much fun and so much pleasure that I'm glad I made that discovery finally.
And we're glad for all the brilliant work that you've done, but also for women in general, Ratna. Too often we look at ourselves through the eyes of other people. And I think that line about, finding that you're of value for yourself and not by somebody else's validation is critical.
It takes women so long. But frankly, it takes men also equally long. Because they are so connected with their work environment. All their value is in their work. But as human beings, we are of value. And the way I am, the way I grow, the way I evolve is of value.
Thank you. Here's to another 40 years as an actor and many more.
I don't want to live so long.
Okay, at least another 20 because we want you around. Thank you, Ratna. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.